Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pickleball and Politics, where I combine my quest to stay out of the kitchen. I'm doing a good job with that, with my passion for politics. Thanks for joining me. I got no pickleball this episode, so if you're here for the pickleball, I know which is riveting. It's all politics today. Another week and another Republican nominee for president I went to see. This week, as you know, last week I went and saw Vivek Ramaswamy up at Scott Brown's No Bullshit, No BS Backyard Barbecue in Rye, New Hampshire. And this week, I traveled to Manchester, New Hampshire to see Governor Ron DeSantis. And I was so on the fence about going up. And it wasn't that great of a day. It was cloudy. It was overcast. It was actually in the 60s up in Manchester. And I was glad I went because as soon as I got there, I realized I was at the same exact hotel that I'd seen President Trump at back in April of this year. I went the night before. I stayed over because I knew there'd be a line in the morning to get in and see him, as there was. You had to be up at the crack of dawn. I was there the night before, and if you go and see my video from April named Trump Rally, you'll see my full review of that. And the night before, the bar was packed. The place was crawling. People were going up and down the halls at night, yelling. Well, I shouldn't say yelling. They were chanting Trump, Trump, Trump. There were 100 people in tents sleeping outside on the streets of Manchester, New Hampshire in April. And so the doors were opening at 11:30. And when I got there at 11:25, 11:30, it was just about when the doors were opening. I was still looking for the crowd. I walked up. There are stairs there. It was at the DoubleTree Hilton in Manchester. If you're familiar with it, you park. So first I was like, ooh, where am I going to be able to park? Yeah, well, I had no problem parking. The parking lot was empty. And then I went up the stairs, and I saw that the little side bar they have beside the real bar, because there's a real bar there, where I ate and met a few great people. Jody, I bet you're still out there, Jody. I haven't forgot about you. I met a great woman, Jody, there that night. She was in her late 70s, and she'd driven from Vermont to see Donald Trump because she loves him so much. So the little bar behind the big bar, there was a whole table outside, and there were the posters that said DeSantis. They had hats, they had bumper stickers, they had lawn signs. They had a couple of little stickers they wanted you to put on. I didn't. And they were giving out little drink koozies. They had these in blue too, but I thought red would look better. And if my first impression right away was, there's no one here. And my second impression was, this isn't a Ron DeSantis rally. This is a dead Santis rally. I got in there and I thought, this guy doesn't have a chance. Not a chance. He's going to be here in a half hour, and there's literally 3 people in the place. And most of the people who were walking around were his, advanced people. So, as you know, if you go back and you look at my Vivek in New Hampshire podcast that I did about seeing, I called him Vivek, it's Vivek, seeing Vivek up in New Hampshire last week, I told you I loved that he had his platform on the back of his posters. Well, DeSantis doesn't. He's just got DeSantis 2024, and it says, never back down. Okay? That's all it says. Never back down. And like I said, these little things. So I got in there, and there's literally no one there. But there are 2 guys sitting on the side of the stage And they looked friendly enough. So I went, and there was 3 seats, and there were 2 of them, and they looked friendly enough. So I went and sat with them. It was Bobby. Bobby, if you're out there, I know you're listening, Bobby. We became fast friends. It was a young fellow in his early 20s with his dad. I never got dad's name, but we had a great, great conversation. So they told me that they see every single solitary person. They told me that Marianne Williams was across the street. They'd recently seen Larry Elders, and they were surprised he was at the door welcoming them. They'd seen DeSantis before. They've seen Vivek. They've seen Trump, of course. They had pictures with Mike Pence. They showed me pictures of them with Mike Pence. They've seen Chris Christie. They saw Robert Kennedy Jr. They saw Joe Biden the last time he was running in 2020 in New Hampshire. So they went down a whole list, this is just off the top of my head, of all the different candidates that they've been to their rallies. And they said by far, this was the lowest attended rally they had been to. By far. They said they couldn't believe how few people there were when the event was starting in like 20 minutes. It was very, very poorly attended. I would say if you take away his people, maybe 70 people, maybe. And then there was additional people who came in with him when he arrived that were media, newspaper reporters, photographers. Probably 10 or 15 of them, made the crowd jump up by 20%. But I was shocked because I'd been at this same location in April. And the night before, you could hardly get a seat at the bar. The place was packed. It was crawling. There were people everywhere. The next day, people everywhere trying to get into the Armory, which is beside the DoubleTree, the next day for the Trump rally. 7 o'clock in the morning, there was already a line of thousands of people. There were thousands of people who didn't get in for the Trump rally. And here I am at Governor Ron DeSantis' rally. And I thought, he's dead in the water. He's DOA, dead on arrival. I'm going to call him Dead Santis now. Not DeSantis, because I know a lot of people are doing that now. But I couldn't believe the difference because people stood for hours and hours in the rain and it was cold. Waited hours for the Secret Service to let them into that Trump rally just a few months ago, 4 months ago. And here I am at the same spot, much closer to the primaries. And Governor Ron DeSantis really had no one there. Now, Bobby and his dad had told me it was originally scheduled for Murphy's Tap Room, which was really nearby. I don't know Manchester that well, so I don't know where it was. And for whatever reason, they moved it. I don't know why they moved it, but it was in a different location than originally planned. I don't know because they were expecting a smaller crowd or a bigger crowd. I will say they had an advance person at the door who wanted my name. And as soon as I gave the first 3 letters of my last name, they were like, "Oh, is this you?" And I thought, yeah, because you already know who I am because there's hardly anybody here. So the whole energy, the whole atmosphere was completely different than a Trump rally. The crowd had no energy. The crowd wasn't excited. The crowd was there. Now, Bobby and his dad asked me why, if I'm a hardcore Trump supporter, I was there. And I said, well, because I've been coming up here to New Hampshire since 1980 with Ronald Reagan, and I like to see them all. I'm seeing Kerry and Kennedy and Biden and a whole slew of Democrats. I've seen almost all of the Republicans. Like I said, from Ronald Reagan on up, I've seen them all in New Hampshire. I've seen Trump several times now. I told them I'd seen Vivek. Of course, in 2020, we didn't see anybody. But in 2016, I saw Scott Walker. I saw Ted Cruz. I saw Marco Rubio. I saw Rand Paul. I saw person after person after person. I saw Trump in New Hampshire. And I find the whole experience, I'm not, so they asked me, well, if you're hardcore Trump. They told me they were hardcore Trump too, but they like going. And I said, well, I'm like you. I'm not here to support them. I'm here to observe their candidacy. And I could see so much by Ron DeSantis. I would say that he says that he's going to build a wall. He said that he talked extensively about the fact he was a JAG lawyer in Fallujah in 2007 with the Navy in Iraq. Okay, he did talk about that. He did talk about how we need to be socially grounded in truth. In other words, men can't have babies, girls are girls and boys are boys, and we can't lose sight of the truth. He also talked about the administrative state, which I believe is the new catchphrase that everyone is talking about for whatever reason. He said he wants to fire the DOJ and the FBI. I don't know who's going to control everything when he fires them. Not sure about that. One thing he did say is that he knows America because he can go to Fort Myers in January and he'll talk to only people who are there from the Midwest. And he can be down in Miami and he's talking to really the epicenter of Latin America. He can be up on the Georgia border and the Panhandle, and it's like he's in the deep South. And he is true there. He can be in Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, and he's really dealing with New York 2.0. So he does have a point there that he feels he knows America. But that's such a blanket statement as far as I'm concerned. But the problem with Governor DeSantis is he's very robotic. He wasn't making eye contact with people. He was never relaxed. He was never just standing there with like his hand in his pocket and like answering questions, like nonchalant. Everything was very rigid. Now, that could be his Navy. I don't know. It's the first time I've seen him. He was very stiff. He was robotic. He didn't have charisma. He had nowhere near the charisma of Vivek. And, of course, no one has charisma like President Trump. But as I said, I've seen a lot of other presidents. I've seen Clinton. I've seen both Bushes. I saw my icon, Ronald Reagan. I've seen Trump several times. There's an aura, a charisma around all of them. And I just didn't get it. I got it a little bit with Vivek. He had an amazing energy, a lot of charisma. He looks you in the eye. He engages. I didn't get that with Ron DeSantis. All he did, he was very robotic, looking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I kept on looking to see if there were teleprompters or something. There weren't. And I realized that he'd started this, and that was very distracting. It was like he was playing pickleball, watching pickleball or something. He never engaged. I found him a little disingenuous, to be honest with you. I didn't feel any connection to him. I didn't feel like he was trying to connect. He came out and the first thing he said was, live free or die. Oh, that's so cliche. Have in New Hampshire. It just really is. I did, someone in the audience asked, what are you going to do about the northern border, which affects us here in the Northeast? And he said he wants them all sent back. I want them all sent back too. I want them sent back from the southern border, the northern border, the east, the west coast, wherever they're coming in. I'd like them all sent back. I do agree that we need to bring back a culture of life. He said that. And we really do. Life is so precious. And I hate to think about all the babies maybe right now, today, this moment, who aren't going to make it because somebody decided they're not wanted. Oh, it's so sad. It makes me sad. He did tout that Texas sending people up to New York City was a great success. He was laughing about the immigrants he sent to Martha's Vineyard and how quick they were to get them out of there. And He gave his standard stump speech. He didn't make it special. He had no energy. The crowd had no energy. And I was, a year ago, a big Ron DeSantis supporter. Having seen now for Republicans, who I think are in the mix, Vivek and DeSantis, I mean, it's Trump. It's Trump all the way. I talked to a reporter there, and she said, so are you still for Trump, even with these indictments? I go, of course, I'm for Trump now more than ever. We need him now more than ever. This is our last chance, people. If we don't get this country back now, we're gone forever and ever and ever, because they will change the Supreme Court. They will change term limits. They will change the border. They will open up. They will change so many. We'll all be one sex. I mean, it will just go on and on and on, this progressive. We are just fighting against the law of nature at this point, too. Laws of nature, there's, two sexes. There was a time I thought that Ron DeSantis would make a great candidate, and I thought he'd maybe make a great candidate even in 2028. But when you go see someone like Ron DeSantis, after you've seen Trump several times, and you've been at that Trump rally, and you realize the fervor and the love and the passion and the power that he brings out in his fellow Americans, Donald Trump is more than just a moment. He's a movement. He's a movement. He's a moment. He's a once-in-a-lifetime politician, and I hate calling him a politician. Now, the only other politician I consider that can come close to Trump is Ronald Reagan, who will forever be, to me, the greatest president we ever had. I love him. I always will love Ronald Reagan, even more than Trump. But Trump's a really, really close second, let me tell you. I'm still voting for Trump now more than ever after I saw Ron DeSantis. Ron and your people, if you happen to listen to this, step aside. It's time for the other candidates to get behind Trump, to support him, to support us. He is ahead by 30, 40, 50 points among Republicans. Look what they've done to this man since 2015. And he's still within 1 point of Joe Biden. And you know that all of these polls are rigged. You know that. Anyways, as you know, we end every episode with the dink of the day. And I want to tell you, the dink of the day this week is gas prices. I just paid $4.17 for a gallon of gas. And yet, where is the media? They're not talking about it because it doesn't look good for Joe Biden to talk about the fact it cost me $4.18 per gallon to fill up my car. I took 11 gallons and it was $47.36. That's outrageous. $11, 11 gallons of gas a couple of years ago cost me like $23. That's not 8% inflation. That's a full 50 as far as I'm concerned. You can reach me on Instagram and on Getter at Pickleball and Politics. You can reach me on the Big X. What do you think of the X? Tell me what you're thinking of Twitter these days. Pickle and Paul. You can go to my website, pickleballandpolitics.com. Leave me a message or leave me a message on any of those platforms. Or you can follow me right here on YouTube at Pickleball and Politics. Give me a subscribe. Subscribe because you know you never want to miss any of this. I don't know who I'm going to see next, but I will be going to see someone else next because I never would have imagined that Ron DeSantis was in this bad a shape. To the DeSantis crowd out there again, it's time to step down, step aside, go back to Florida, help run the state. All right. I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me again on Pickleball and Politics. Until next time.